This story in Louisville, for background, for people who haven't been paying attention, there's a man named Quintez Brown. He is a Black Lives Matter supporter. He has been on Joy Reid's show in the past on MSNBC during all of the imbroglio surrounding police shootings in the city of Louisville. And this guy, who is 21 years old, he walked into a campaign headquarters, I believe is where it was, and there is a Democrat running for mayor of Louisville. That man's name is Craig Greenberg. He is Jewish, running for mayor of Louisville. This guy walked in with a 9mm, fired at him multiple times. A round grazed Craig Greenberg's clothing, so he could have easily been murdered. This man, Quintez Brown, fires multiple shots at a Jewish mayoral candidate for the city of Louisville. This would in many ways be classified as an assassination attempt. He only gets, Buck, $100,000 in bail money, which is crazy in and of itself. But Black Lives Matter Louisville raises the money partly through crowdfunding and bails him out of jail within 2 days. He is now a free man outside of jail, even though he attempted to assassinate a Jewish mayoral candidate in the city of Louisville. Despite the fact that crowdsourcing has been shut down for all of the Canadian truckers, despite the fact that Kyle Rittenhouse, who was rapidly found not guilty, had a $2 million bail that he had to post to get out of jail and was not allowed to raise any money. And oh, by the way, the media showed up knocking on the door of people who donated $50, $100 to the Kyle Rittenhouse Defense Fund, and they're doing the same thing for the Canadian truckers. This man, a clear BLM supporter who was actually bailed out by BLM Louisville, attempts to assassinate a Jewish politician, and the story is nowhere to be found. I think it should be, Buck, the number one story in America of a domestic nature. Obviously, Ukraine is going on and the Canadian truckers are going on. But in terms of internal stories in the United States, this should be, in my opinion, the number one story. The hypocrisy, the absurdity, the outright lies that are not being discussed here is mind-boggling to me. Your thoughts, and are you as crazily angry over the way this story is playing out as I am?
I think you're right to feel the indignation about the double standard, but I think you and I both know, Clay, these are the rules that we are supposed to play by now. The rules are two sets of rules. One side, the left, gets to do things a certain way. They can raise money for causes. They can have whole political movements that engage in widespread criminal destruction, rioting, looting, arson, and have some members of that political group, in the case of BLM, who either try to or do kill cops, or in this case, this guy was an avowed BLM supporter.
Yes.
I believe he had been a guest.
That's right.
On
he was
MSNBC.
On Joy Reid's MSNBC show during the story of the BLM protest rise back. It was 2018, to be fair, but he was on her show live from Louisville.
This guy's clearly a member of, as much a card-carrying member as one can be, although I know they don't actually have cards, of the Black Lives Matter movement, and the media doesn't want to touch the story, really. They don't want to talk about it. I'm sure we're going to be hearing, we already have heard a little bit of, oh, there were mental health issues that this individual had. Perhaps this was a personal feud. It had nothing to do with politics. Right away, they shift the narrative away from what could be damaging to the overall movement, which is, hold on a second, what kind of individuals take up leadership roles in BLM? Since we're talking about this, what has BLM done with, I think it was $60 million that was
over
raised?
Over $100 million, I think they raised overall, and they're not sure what happened to tens of millions of it.
Right, well, but there's $60 million specifically that Amazon has said that its charity platform is not getting answers with, wait, you used our Amazon charity platform, you raised $60 million, what did you do with this? So they've suspended them now as a result of it. That's a lot of money for a charity that doesn't actually do charity. You know, it's time we have a reckoning in this country with the fact that BLM as a movement, I wrote about this at foxnews.com, has a legacy now of more crime, more dead people across the board, young Black Americans, police officers, more murders, more crime. What did this movement actually give the country that didn't make things worse? And yet corporate America bent the knee, was begging, said, BLM, how big a check can I write to you? What does BLM even try to do? What is it trying to accomplish?
Well, they're bailing out attempted murderers is one way they're using their money.
Exactly. You see, well, what does the movement do? What decisions does it make? Is it actually promoting things that will provide for safer communities? Is it improving community police relations? Is it having worthwhile conversations in high crime communities about why is this a high crime community? What's going on here? What can we do to make things better? No, BLM, as we know, was the mobilization of the left. It was the mob. It was leftist rage out in the streets in an election year. And now we find ourselves looking at this saying to each other, what exactly is it going to take before this becomes, I mean, the truckers have the full weight of the Canadian government coming down on them. And so far, all I've seen is a bunch of guys like handing out sandwiches and, you know, playing hockey in the streets while their trucks are parked in downtown Ottawa and they've blocked some traffic. I get that. But Clay, they're using terror finance statutes in Canada to seize people's bank accounts. BLM has had people, there was a BLM supporter in the first iteration of the movement who assassinated 5 Dallas police officers. Never hear about that anymore. You know, this individual who tried to kill the would-be mayor of Louisville, Kentucky, and yet there's no conversation at the national level about what exactly does BLM stand for, and why is it that the Democrat Party got away with embracing this movement wholesale and now just acts like it didn't happen? Same thing we're going to see with all the COVID restrictions, Clay, as we've talked about. Oh, we never did that. We never believed that. When it works for them, they're all about it. When the consequences are felt by the American people, they change. They rewrite history.
This is why I think, and I understand the argument of there are different rules for different people based on whether they have a big D or a big R in front of their name, right? I understand that. But this is how you win independent voters. This is how you win people in the middle part of the country. This is how you win persuadable Democrats, by pointing this out. BLM is bailing a man out of prison who attempted to assassinate a Jewish politician. And almost no one, are you seeing this story anywhere on MSNBC, despite the fact that they had this dude, Quintez Brown, as a guest? Are you seeing this on CNN? Has the Washington Post or the New York Times even covered it? This is, to me, a perfect distillation of the hypocrisy of BLM and also the underlying, and this is a big deal, Buck, because it doesn't get much attention, the underlying anti-Semitism of much of the BLM apparatus. Remember, when they're out marching, a lot of times they started chanting anti-Israeli, anti-Jewish chants. And even this politician in Louisville, and by the way, we're number one in the radio market of Louisville, so I know a lot of you people listening right now in Kentucky who have had to see this on the ground, the Breonna Taylor fallout, everything that has to do with the power of BLM. You haven't felt like you can even speak out about it. This has to destroy BLM to the extent that it still had any moral authority in many parts of the country. BLM is finished, I would imagine, in Louisville after this decision.
And now we see also how the system becomes the fallback. I'm sure if they're pushed on this, Clay, they'll say, well, everyone should be able to, a judge should be able to set bail. Okay, well, what's the amount of bail? And also, isn't somebody that tries to kill a politician for reasons that we're still finding out, isn't that someone who's a danger to the public, and therefore bail, you would think, is not something that you would get? I mean, $100,000 bail for an attempted political assassination, as you point out, that's what this seems to be. That's pretty low. And beyond that, we've seen people who have lost their jobs. In fact, it's happening right now. People are losing their jobs for giving money to support the Canadian truckers. people lost their jobs for giving money to Kyle Rittenhouse's defense. If you donated to Kyle Rittenhouse's defense, I thought we all believed in this country that everybody should get the best defense they possibly can so that justice can be done. Not when it came to Kyle Rittenhouse. The entire national Democrat media pretended like that wasn't an abandonment of principle. So they can only get away with these games so much. It's either everyone gets the best trial, or the best defense, rather, a trial they can. Everyone should be entitled to a fair bail hearing or not. It can't just be, well, when there's somebody who's tied into BLM, we're going to have a very different approach to it because of the politics around it. And I think we all see that that's what's actually going on here.
And imagine how this story would be covered for people out there saying, well, it's not that big of a story. I disagree with you. But imagine how big this story would be being covered if it were a dyed-in-the-wool Donald Trump supporter who had attempted to assassinate a Jewish mayoral candidate in Louisville, and then a somehow Donald Trump-affiliated charity had bailed that person out of jail, and if that person had only gotten a $100,000 bail that he had to post to get out. I mean, this is, to me, shameful. It is the essence of hypocrisy. It is defining, in many ways, the underlying racism which is characterized by Black Lives Matter, and also, frankly, the anti-Semitism. If I'm the Jewish mayoral candidate in Louisville, I'm looking around and saying, wait a minute, do Jewish lives matter? This dude walked into my office and tried to assassinate me. He also, by the way, has a series, it appears, of anti-Semitic posts that are out there, and he may well be mentally troubled. I don't doubt that. Many people who decide to try to kill people are. But that would be more evidence of why he doesn't need to be on the street right now. Would you feel safe if you're that mayoral candidate and the guy who tried to kill you is already back on the street and could theoretically show up anywhere, or some other misguided lunatic of BLM is going to maybe follow up with what he tried to do?
One quick thing to add in here, Clay. There were people who were held in solitary confinement for 7, 8, 9 months at a time for illegal parading in a government building. Okay, so we want to know what justice looks like in America. Ask the J6 denied bail because they're such a threat, the January 6 people, versus what's going on here with an attempted assassination. Ask them.
Well said. And I donated money, by the way. I want to be clear about this. Everybody is entitled to the best possible lawyer they can get. I'm an old school lawyer in the context of John Adams made the right decision when he defended the people who shot on the colonists at the Boston Tea Party. And I donated money to those guys who were, girls, mostly guys, who were still being held inside of prisons because I think they need the right defense fund. But I'm consistent here. BLM isn't. They're frauds.